Hi everyone, this is a Mars Hill Latin 4 lesson 26 lecture video. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Unit 5 introduction and then get into the material specifically in lesson 26. This is your last unit of grammar before you start translation classes. So congratulate yourself for a lot of hard work. So Unit 5 is partially about irregular verbs. Actually, it's mostly focused on that. And you already know one, well, you know multiple, but one of the irregular verbs you know is sum. It's irregular insofar as it doesn't belong to any other conjugation, but functions on its own rules, although it follows some of the regular rules, like personal endings. So sum is not the only irregular verb in Latin. Other common irregular verbs are eo, the principal parts of which are eo, ire, ivi, or ii, and then itus. So that means to go, a very commonly used word, you'll notice. Then we have fero, whose principal parts are fero, fere, tuli, latus, and that means to bear or carry. Another one, fio, fieri, factus sum. That means to become or to be done. So it's a little bit related to facio, which is a word you already know. And then we have volo, vele, volui, which doesn't have a fourth principal part, and that's to wish or to be willing. These verbs are not as difficult as they will appear to be at first. For example, fero and volo are similar to third conjugation verbs, while fio is similar to a semi-deponent third io verb. In fact, all of these verbs have only a few forms which are completely irregular. The rest of the forms follow a pattern you've already learned. So in lesson 14, your vocabulary contained prefixed verbs, if you'll remember, based on sum. Prefixed verbs can also be found and formed using the irregular verbs in this unit. In addition to these verbs, you will learn about indefinite pronouns, which refer to a non-specific person or thing, such as someone or somebody or whatever. Most indefinite pronouns are formed by adding a prefix or suffix to an existing Latin pronoun. For example, you know the word quis. Well, to make it indefinite, you can add ali, which means some. So aliquis is someone, or something would be aliquid. But we'll talk about that a little bit more in further lessons. The new vocabulary in Unit 5 is 17 verbs, 4 irregular verbs, and 13 other verbs based on those irregular verbs, and then 4 indefinite pronouns. All right, on to lesson 26. All right, so this lesson covers eo. Again, I will ask you to be careful to memorize the principal parts here because they are not exactly what you would expect based on other things you've learned. So the principal parts are eo, ire, and then the perfect can be either ivi, ivi, or ii, just 2 i's together. And then itus is the fourth principal part. Okay, so the present goes eo is it, imus itis eunt, and that would be I go, you go, etc. Then we have the imperfect, which has the I stem, and then it has our imperfect endings that we've always expected. So bom, bas, bot, bomus, bati, spont. Okay, same with the future. It's what we'd expect. We have our I stem, and then we're going to add our future endings like we would in a first or second conjugation future. So ibo, ibis, ibit, ibimus, ibitis, ibunt. Okay, then the perfect, also regular. we have our perfect stem iv, and then we add our perfect endings, I, isti, it. So we get ivi, ivisti, ivit, ivimus, ivisti, iverunt. In the pluperfect, again, we have our perfect stem plus our imperfect of sum, so we get iveram, iveras, iverat, iveramus, iveratis, iverant. And then again, in our future, we have our perfect stem plus our future of sum, with the exception of the third person plural, which is changed to I instead of you. So we get ivero, iveris, iverit, iverimus, iveritis, iverint. All right, so that's all of the active indicative forms. And once you get started on them, they are pretty regular and easily memorized. Okay, what about the subjunctive? So remember that the subjunctive mood doesn't have future or future perfect tenses because subjunctive, like future, is already sort of potential. So you don't need to do both of those together. So we have present, imperfect, perfect, and pluperfect. Okay, so here are the actives. We have eam, eas, eat, eamus, eatis, eant. You'll notice that that is like the second conjugation, present, active, subjunctive. For example, moneam, moneas, moneat. Okay, then we have the imperfect, which is, remember, my favorite one because it's so easy. You take imperfect, to make the imperfect subjunctive active, you just take the present active infinitive and you add the personal endings. So the present active infinitive being ire, we add our personal endings and we get irem, ires, iret, iremus, iretis, irent. Okay, then for the perfect subjunctive, we take our perfect stem, iv, and we're adding erim, eris, erit, erimus, eritis, erint. Okay, so remember also here that the perfect subjunctive of verbs, the perfect subjunctive active, looks very, very similar, except for the first person singular, to the future perfect active indicative. Okay, then we have pluperfect subjunctive active. We have our perfect stem iv, and then we're going to add isem, ises, iset, isemus, isetis, isent. And that's what we have. Okay, what about our verbals? Remember that there are several kinds of verbals, which are verb forms that are like other things. So we have participles, which are verbal adjectives. We have gerundives, which are also verbal adjectives. We also have gerunds and infinitives, which are verbal nouns. So the participle, the present participle of eo, of eo is iens euntis, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. There's no perfect active participle, as you know. And then the future participle is iturus aum. Okay. The present infinitive is ire. The perfect is ivise or ise. And the future infinitive is iturus aum plus esse. Okay, then we have the gerund, eundi, and the imperative. Now the imperative is kind of funny. The singular imperative is just the letter I, e. And then the plural is ite. Okay? All right, so turning to page 81, eu is an irregular verb like sum. Even though its infinitive is ire, eu is not a fourth conjugation verb. Remember not to mistake it for one because it is very irregular and it doesn't follow the patterns of the fourth conjugation. Okay? In the present system indicative, eu has regular tense endings. The stem is I, except before the letters A, O, and U, where it becomes E. Okay, so this only occurs in two forms, you'll notice, which are AO and EUNT, and in all other cases we have an I in the stem. In the present system subjunctive, the regular personal endings are added to ea, the present tense, or ire, the infinitive, which is the imperfect tense stem. The perfect system is perfectly regular in both the indicative and the subjunctive. It is built on the stem iv, which sometimes is shortened to I. The pluperfect may be further shortened to is instead of it is. Okay? And then we have here on page 81 the perfect indicative alternate forms. So it could be, instead of ivi, it could just be ii, iisti, iit, iimus, iistis, ierunt. And then the pluperfect, ieram, ieras, ierat, ieramus, ieratis, ierant. Or the future perfect, iero, ieris, ierit, ierimus, ieritis, ierint. And then the perfect subjunctive, ierim, ieris, ierit, ierimus, ieritis, ierint. And the pluperfect could be iisem or isem, etc. The perfect infinitive, and future participle are formed regularly. The other verbals are irregular and must be memorized. Okay, so take a minute this week and review how to form your different verbals. These would be in the beginning, I believe, in Unit 4, where we talked about how to form the various verbals, because that will come up again. Okay, and here's a vocabulary note or two. When ao is part of a prefixed verb, that is, a verb with a prefix attached to it, the perfect stem is usually I instead of iv. All of the prefixed verbs in the vocabulary are conjugated exactly like ao. Another note here, red, R-E-D, is an alternate spelling for re, R-E. So your vocabulary for this week are abeo, which is to go away. Remember, ab means away or from, and ao again is go. Then we have adeo, to go to or to visit. Then we have exeo, which is to go out. Inneo, to begin or enter upon. Redeo, to return. And transeo, to go across. And then you have ao that you have to memorize. So all of those words are very frequently used. So make sure you get really comfortable with them, okay? Okay, so the passive of ao. Ao can be used in passive in certain forms, and some compounds of ao have a full passive. For example, the future infinitive of a verb is formed using ire, you'll remember, which is the passive infinitive of ao. But in order to focus on several different irregular verbs, these passive forms will not be learned this year. Okay. All right, so that's about it for lesson 26. I will see you in class. God bless you.